Hi, this is Steve Hargadon, and it is day 4 of the Learning 2.0 conference. And welcome to the keynote panel on technology and librarians. This is of real importance to me. I felt like we couldn't have a conference on Learning 2.0 without having some active librarian participation. Now, I do host a Library 2.0 conference that takes place in early October. Go to library20.com for more information about that. So we will have lots and lots of sessions on libraries, librarians, and librarianship at that time. But we wanted to make sure we did something special for this conference. And so David Lurcher, Gwyneth Jones, Michelle Ludala, Shannon Miller, and Joyce Valenza are going to have a panel discussion about this topic. Thanks to Follett and Intel for supporting the conference, and we express appreciation to Mighty Bell, Blackboard Collaborate, Taking It Global, EdWeb, and Edutopia for in-kind help. So here's your panel, hopefully in the right order with the right names. And David needs a blank whiteboard, so David, you can go back to this slide when you're not using the blank whiteboard. But here you go, and I will let you start. And if your microphone isn't on, David, you'll need to turn it on.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. I'm going to put up the questions that will guide this on the top of the whiteboard here. And I'll just get them up here in just a second. And we're going to begin by asking the first question. And as we do so, well, I thought I was going to do that. Well, I wonder if I
can help.
Well, I had it copied. Can I type it in the? I'll type it in the text box. Can you? I don't know why it's not registering, but I'll put it in the chat box.
Okay, and I'm glad to put it on the screen if you'd like.
Well, I don't know why. Uh-oh. Oh, Steve, it's, oh. There it goes, I guess, in the chat box. Do you see that, Steve?
I don't see it yet. Did you hit enter?
Well, let's see. I'll do that right now.
There we go.
Okay. Okay, so there's the kind of the overall questions that we'll be asking our panelists today, and thank you all for agreeing to participate. So I thought you could introduce yourself kind of with that first question. You know, what's happened to you in the last 5 years as this whole technology has descended on the world? And so I'll just close my mic. Gwyneth, why don't you just start?
All right. David, you want me to give an introduction or a hello, and then?
Yeah, introduce yourself as you answer that question.
All right, will do. Hey, everybody. I'm really tickled pink and excited to be here. My name is Gwyneth Jones. I'm also known as the Daring Librarian. And I am a middle school teacher librarian between Baltimore and Washington, D.C., in the lovely city of Columbia, Maryland. And this is my 21st year teaching. And I'm really excited to be here, as I said. And let's see. Quick overview. With the proliferation of information and technology, how has your role changed as a teacher librarian in the past 5 years? I'd like to think that with the kind of, thanks George, with the kind of mentoring I've gotten from Joyce and Kathy Schrock and so many of our wonderful leaders, and definitely with the support of my personal learning network, my game has really changed a lot, and my role, however, as a teacher librarian in my school has not changed all that much, except for, I suppose, being more of helping with testing, with that wonderful state standardized testing. But I mean, since I started my job 15 years ago in my middle school, I've always been the webmaster of the school, the technology leader of the school, the main person who purchases the technology or helps install it and get things going. My role as a teacher, collaborating with my other teachers, reaching out to all the different subject areas, especially math and science, because, you know, I've got my English teachers and my social studies teachers already sort of drinking my Kool-Aid. So it hasn't, I'd like to say it's changed a great deal with the technology, but it hasn't. Honestly, the technology has just changed the modality with which I engage my students and my staff. So it's really more about collaborating to find out what their needs are, fitting them in, and hopefully teaming to be successful. And I'll pass the mic over to the next person.
Joyce, you want to start?
Sure. You know, I just looked at that question with some through a new lens, and I put a link in there. And I've been thinking about change, and I don't think we've been teaching different things. I just think we've been teaching things differently. And as I'm looking at how we might have reinterpreted this stuff, you know, I'm thinking about how the various different principles of librarianship may have changed. When I'm thinking about intellectual property, I'm thinking about how the big shift for me has been from very rigorously saying no to so many things to much more enthusiastically saying yes. And I've called that from being gatekeeper to cheerleader, because I'm celebrating fair use and Creative Commons in a way that I didn't know when I started in this field 35 years ago. And I may have the longest on-the-ground experience. I know everybody's been a librarian in this panel, but I've been doing it for a really long time. And then the other note is, like, when I had kids right before, certainly there was no audience other than teachers' eyes only. Networking has changed, bringing authors and experts into the classroom, helping other teachers do the same thing, sharing reading experiences, celebrating intellectual freedom absolutely has changed, because we're fighting on a whole bunch of different battlefields, waving the banner of intellectual freedom. Where we used to be defending books only, we're now, and I know Michelle can speak to this a lot more expertly than I, we're really waving another banner of intellectual freedom and making sure that all students have intellectual and physical access to the tools and the content they need. Certainly cataloging has shifted. Certainly how we're providing content and tools to learners and teachers has changed. Curation has, the tools for curation have shifted. The notion of collection has shifted. Our physical space has shifted, and I know that David's Learning Commons is part of the change in that model. And how we retool has certainly shifted. How we deliver professional development to each other and to the faculty we've served. And I guess that'll serve as a little bit of an introduction from me.
Great. Michelle, let's hear from you.
All right. Well, I'm going to go since Joyce kind of gave me a nice segue to talk about a few of the things that I think we focus on a lot. 5 years ago, I was really teaching a fairly unimaginative program. I think, honestly, it focused on, accessing databases and books and probably putting together bibliographies and focusing on the research and the reading, which I'm still doing. But I think that there are a lot of things that have really redefined how it is that we teach. First, e-content, second, participatory media, and third, mobile learning. And really, these three things are kind of redefining the parameters of how I actually deliver instruction. If you look at Big Six that locating resources piece, we're kind of getting stuck there, I'm finding, because I find that a huge part of my job is actually just on trying to figure out how to get e-content to students, how to find a usable and manageable and user-friendly portal to package, or as Joyce likes to use the term container, and I love it, sort of a container where they can access all of these digital resources in one place so they don't have to go out to 50 different places. So they can focus on actually learning, reading, research, and really processing the information and being able to create new content out of those resources. But mobile learning comes into play because how they're accessing it depends on what the tool that they're using to access it. And really, for the most part, our kids aren't really using desktop computers to do a lot of their work at this point. A lot of them are using whatever is in their pocket. So we have to try to deliver that library pretty much in, and this is again, Joyce and I were talking about this just, I don't know, 2 days ago, last night. How are we going to get that library into their hand, into their pocket, so that they have them on them at all times? Cataloging content is really, really different with e-content because we have, a miscatalogued book can still be seen. Miscatalogued e-content can't. And so that's really sort of reshifted our focus on cataloging in ways that we haven't really focused on in a long time. So I think that there are a lot of things. I do want to talk a little bit about the intellectual freedom piece that Joyce mentioned, because we have Banned Websites Awareness Day coming up just on October 3rd. And this is really an effort for AASL to target one day out of Banned Books Week to dedicate to the issue of filtering as an obstruction to teaching and learning in K-12 environments. So I wanted to put that plug in there, and I will add the link to the chat. And I'm going to turn it over to the next person.
And I'm Dave Lurcher, professor at San Jose State University, and during the past 5 years, I think my entire teaching life has changed dramatically. I mean, about 10 years ago, I was teaching only face-to-face, and then I met a company by the name of Blackboard and started using their free version. And then about 5 years ago, got on to Illuminate, and suddenly I discovered that I didn't have to live where I worked, and as long as I had a good internet connection. And so now I teach totally online, and I think the entire teaching and learning process has changed for both me and my students, and it is a totally new world, new ways of interacting, new ways of learning. I find that the types of constructivist online stuff that I do, that my students learn exponentially more than I ever was able to get from the face-to-face and kind of low-tech world, which brings us to the question number 2. So, a lot of folks say that technology really hasn't made a difference. I'm going to ask our panel just to, and because the world of information now is just gargantuan, and the tech tools that we now have available are, there's just a plethora of them. So what difference, are you seeing any boost to teaching and learning in, quote, this new environment?
So David, do you want them to raise their hands?
No, just click on the talk button and go.
I guess I'll get started with that. Yeah, the answer is yes. Is it being measured? And I think the answer to that is no, because I don't think we have a metric to really discover the type of learning that I'm observing anecdotally, and I think that's something I'd really like to start working on. But watching some of my students engage in the very best possible digital storytelling, I am seeing new types of authorship. Having students publish their work in ways they've never done before and getting response to their writing has, in my mind, and from what I've observed, encouraged better writing on behalf of many of my students. I am seeing this, and I'd love to start studying this, but longitudinally, I am seeing students come back to me after they've graduated and tell me that they can manage technical things better than their classmates at the university. I'm seeing a generation of bloggers. Some of the students that I first started playing around with blogging with are now professional bloggers. They're writing for a living in the particular niches that they're passionate about. I'm seeing all sorts of applications. Some of my students are now filmmakers. I don't know that our tests measure that stuff yet. I have hopes that the Common Core will value some of the types of writing that we're doing now in schools. I'm looking at their access to information and their ability to write with resources that they've never been able to use before. And also, again, unmeasured is this new type of reading that I'm seeing. I know that a lot of my kids, I cannot tell you numbers, are reading more because I know they're engaged in new discussions with each other about reading. The kids come and tell me about this kind of underground reading stuff that's happening. My kids are avid followers of John Green and Maureen Johnson and Librarians, and they're attached to their blogs. They're inspired to do good work. And they're communicating with each other about books, reading, and ideas. They're writing for NaNoWriMo, and you know what? I don't know how to measure this type of learning, and I am afraid we're losing a whole lot of statistics because we don't know how to look at this kind of informal learning and connectedness. But I know that those students are the students that I am really excited about, not necessarily the kids who do great on the, I love all of my students, but the kids who do well on the bubble test, we're measuring, we're capturing that, but we're not celebrating a lot of the achievement that I see going on less formally and less schooly.
One of the things that's really changed for me is we assessed over 1,000 students last spring about their use of actually largely mobile technology. And while 63% of our kids have an app-enabled device, we are finding that they only have less than 5 of the the must-have apps on those devices to use them for productivity and learning. So one of the things that we're really trying to concentrate on is really get them to use the tools that they have for teaching and learning, to enhance their productivity, to expand their curiosity, to really push them out there into the realm where they're using Symbaloo on their device, and they're using these kinds of tools, the curation tools that Joyce talks about all the time. Most of those have apps, and yet most of our students don't have those apps. They don't even have the fundamental library catalog on there. So I'm really finding that this is kind of redefining how we work. When I walk into a classroom, the first thing I say is take out your device and let's get some apps on there. Let's get going. We have enough apps. We have enough devices in our library that we can circulate, that we can provide those to students who don't have a device, and we really want to get that moving. But it's definitely changed a lot of how I actually interact with the students in my instructional piece, because the first thing we have to do is actually really mechanical. This is kind of rudimentary stuff. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to work on in terms of assessment. We started our first assessment in 2010. We did another one last fall. We did another one last spring, and that's one of the things I want to continue to see. And then we want to look for correlation in terms of learning and understanding the program and what the services that we offer and how they are integrating that into their own development and their own original work and creation. I'll stop. Gwyneth?
Thanks, Michelle. It's so exciting to hear the things that you guys are doing in the high schools. In the middle schools, it's a little bit different in the fact that I bring in mobile apps to my kids via other kinds of ways, because theoretically in my school they're not supposed to have their cell phones in their pockets. And so I bought a couple iPod Touch Generation 4s, and then I created a permission slip, though, for when we do our digital discoveries using mobile apps and mobile devices. And I'll go to the classroom the day before that the kids are supposed to come into the library, and I'll pass out they're like a half-sheet permission slip, and I've made that available on the wiki, and I can get that to you. If the latest version's not on there, I'll update it. But what the exciting part is, some of my parents are a little concerned about, having the kids bring their mobile apps because they're always afraid they're going to get in trouble. And I said, no, it's okay. The media center, the library media center, is a mobile-friendly zone, and we're going to be using them for instructional usage. So the parents sign off. Yes, I give my child permission to bring their library their mobile app, enacted phone and app-rich phone to the library to do those kinds of activities. Because in middle school, I think my parents are really concerned that those cameras could get stolen. Phones could get stolen or messed up or what have you. So the fun thing is when they do come in and we have something going on and they get to finally go there. And I think I try to do a little bit what you're doing, Michelle, is see what apps they have. And I have a list that I share with them of, the apps that I recommend that they get on there. And then we take some time that we're all on board with the apps that we need for the activity that we're doing, although that also is on the permission slip the night before so they can hopefully come in ready. But, invariably they don't. So that kind of exciting thing. Now, I know my kids, and I know that, like Peggy George said in the chat before, you tell them they can't do something and they're bound and determined to find a way. So sometimes I try to engage my kids in sneaky ways, like I do what I call Lou reviews, and I'll make a QR code that's linked to a book review of something that just came in, and I'll have one for the guys and one for the gals, and I'll put on the top of a 8.5 by 11 sheet, do not scan this, and then at the bottom I'll say, with your free Enigma QR code reader, which can be found on the App Store, either Android or iPhone, in very small parentheses, and then the QR code is extra big with a extra large using KWA is my modality to make that large QR code, and I laminate that and post that on the inside of the bathroom stalls, because my middle school kids go into the bathrooms, of course, to check their email and to check their phones, and I sometimes have kids coming in, and it's really funny when the guys go in, hey, Miss Jones, I heard about this book, and where is it? And I'm like, oh, right, it's right here. Now, gee whiz, where did you hear about that book? And then I can show it to them. So that's kind of a way, and I don't know how rich that is or how you measure that, but I guess I measure that by the books that I promote in my Lou reviews going in and out of my library like gangbusters. So, from the time I was doing some of the early, interactive things with Hyper Studio, and I'm trying to think back like 10, 15 years ago doing some of the early animation kind of stuff. I guess with the changing of technology, we have grown, and there's so many cool ways, but I can't wait for Joyce to talk to you about some of the curation, because I think the wise part of this is the curation piece that Joyce is she's like, my maven on this, is that teaching our kids not necessarily how to find the information. I think our kids are really getting to be quite clever. Our database training has gone on for long enough, and they know where to find it. But, it's how to evaluate it, how to judge it, how to, put it into the different buckets of knowledge, of their categories where they can easily reach it, without looking, just close their eyes and grab it back. It's like a surgeon going in with a scalpel rather than a weed whacker or a chainsaw, going in, getting what you need, and getting back out. So I'm going to pass it along again.
Well, one of the most exciting parts of the technology that I've worked with my students on are all the new collaborative kind of tools that numerous kids can be on the same page. For example, the Google document, where actual collaborative writing can happen. And I use the spreadsheet constantly for the gathering of ideas from everyone, and then together as a group we look across everyone's contribution in real time, so that the emphasis in the lesson is not on the gathering of information so much as the analysis and synthesis of what everyone has discovered, ideas or data, and that I've seen is a very rich higher level learning experience, so that and when it happens in real time, what everyone knows is so much larger than if each person had done a little bit of research and found out this fact or that fact. It's just I am incredibly amazed all the time about how much more folks can learn in the same amount of time using the collaborative tools. Any other comments on this? Joyce, do you want to talk about curation here and the benefits you see in learning coming out of curation?
Yeah, okay, and honestly, David, that's kind of a nice segue, because one of the things that came out in the chat while we were all speaking was kind of how the playing around with assessments and performance assessment and where we're going with portfolios. And I think this might be a big year for us to attack that as librarians. I see that as another one of those sweet spots. It's a form of curation, the way I think about it. We're losing so much evidence of student work. We're losing all these artifacts. And the librarian who knows the students across the disciplines and across the grade levels seems to me to be in a perfect spot to begin the discussion of school-wide portfolio curation, with students being at the center of it in terms of making decisions about what gets collected and how to and their reflections on the stuff that they're collecting, and really beginning to build what we're talking about as an academic digital footprint. And so if we talk about curation, I'm really thinking that student work plays a large role in that. I'm building collection, but part of my collection can absolutely be the work of my students, the instruction they create for the learning community, their products, their digital stories, their papers that we can now publish as little books, their artwork, which we can now put in galleries that can be critiqued. Until now, we haven't really had the right containers for that content, but now we've got a variety of different options, and I think it's time to stop losing this work. And so I'm hoping that that's one of the movements I can play a role in my school and probably beyond this year. And yes, Google Apps it could play an important role in it. We can use things like Google Sites. There's so many possibilities. So anyway, curation is one of those things I've been talking about a lot this year. And when I first started thinking about it, I was thinking about it in the way that the marketing people and the business people were thinking about it. And Robin Good certainly is a leader in this. Howard Rangel's been talking about it a lot. Peter Levy, there's a lot of people writing about curation, but I'm thinking about curation on 3 or 4 fronts. One, curation in my mind is the new search. I am discovering that there are so many talented people. If you discover who the talented people are, who the experts, who the best hobbyists are, who the most passionate people are, and if you search their curation efforts, the example I gave in my blog was searching on the topic of autism. Try doing a search in Google on autism and then compare that search to a search in Scoopit, Paperly, LibGuides, any of those tools on autism, and see what the difference is. The difference is that you get context. You get somebody who's created, who's made some selection. That's a good and a bad thing, but you know how you're determining who the right curator for you is an evaluation activity. But it's a different kind of search, and I want students, teachers, parents to be aware of that as a new search strategy. Number 2, curating with kids is the opportunity to get kids to build a kind of a knowledge center for themselves. What feeds am I going to allow in? My experiment this past year was with Paperly, and that actually I thought backfired at first, but it actually turned into a real learning experience. Because what happened was in Paperly, for instance, the kids get to choose 10 feeds. Now, how do you decide what 10 feeds you have? And then your own Twitter feed is automatically one of those feeds, which my kids discovered later on was not a good thing in a subject-oriented curation effort. So we had to, the first morning we looked at the papers, we discovered, okay, we don't want that personal stuff coming through in your newspaper, so eliminate that. And if you get 10 different combinations and you have to choose hashtags, which hashtags are you going to choose? Which @ signs are you going to choose? Are you going to choose an individual, Or are you going to choose a major organization or a major publication or a major lobbying group? And if you do that, will you get the benefit of multiple feeds? And that old game, like, what would you wish for if you were given 3 wishes? I'd wish for more wishes. So what you can do is, if you're choosing feeds, you choose the feed of another curation effort. So you're getting you're curating the curating efforts. I know this is getting really complicated. In any case, so for kids, I'm discovering that curation actually is a learning activity. It's about evaluation. And for some of my kids who got their things really off the ground, they developed a niche of followers. So if they're curating about a particular type of fashion or skateboard parks, they really have a following, and they're making a difference in a particular community. And then I've discovered also that my curation efforts for my various different constituent groups makes a difference in their lives. If I do not curate, for instance, the ebooks that come out of my various subscriptions, they go undiscovered and the money gets wasted. When I do curate for a particular project or a teacher or a professional development activity, then things get discovered. And when I do it collaboratively, we build knowledge together. So I see that as self-curation. That's an interesting thing, too. That kind of fits into the portfolio idea, David. And it also comes in under the idea Harold Jarch talks about personal knowledge management. I think we curate for others, but we also curate for ourselves. I mean, there are things I don't want people to discover that I'm pulling together because it feeds my thinking. So anyway, that's the beginning. I could talk for 20 hours about curation, but I better stop so other folks can join in if they like.
Well, I certainly agree that this is a whole new world. In fact, as you know, Joyce, I've been working on an expanded kind of idea of what information literacy is, and it's kind of like your own personal learning environment, which is a little broader concept. And I'm going to put in the chat a URL where a kid is describing what their virtual learning commons looks like. And in this, I think I put the wrong one in there. Anyway, the whole idea that the first thing you do as an individual is you build your own portal into the world of information rather than having it come at you, which is a juggernaut that just overwhelms everybody. And then as you construct that and keep that fresh, you're building your own personal learning network that Joyce has talked about. That's your own personal curation. That's the people you listen to. That's the tools you use. That's all the work you're doing. And that ends up, in a portfolio which is both private and personal. So if anybody Googles you, for example, they see what you try to put out about yourself rather than what just turns up. So you have a little more control over what. So you're building this personal expertise and the whole idea of collaborative intelligence, what you contributed to as well as what you created yourself. And that kind of builds just this whole world that you have some control over, and in which you're exhibiting for the world what you know and are able to do. I'll open it to any other comments on that one.
I'll take that. I'll grab the mic for that. I'm very passionate about some of the topics when it comes to transparency and creating a positive digital footprint for both ourselves and for our students. And it's really challenging as, again, a middle school person because, honestly, there is nothing set up in my district for creating a positive digital footprint for my students because everybody's so gosh darn concerned about safety and privacy issues. And I keep, trying to push them forward saying, well, I'm getting permission from parents and from my administrator, and I'm going to apologize rather than ask permission from my district, and don't tell my district this, thanks a lot, because I think our kids need to start creating those positive digital footprints. And in middle school, we do that just with the first name and maybe last initial. But by the time they get to high school, if they don't have anything, then that's a concern. And then I asked some of my high school teacher librarians, I was like, well, when they leave high school, how much of what they did for you guys is published online that people can see and not in protected little walled gardens of, you know, private wikis and such? And most of them are saying not much. So, you know, Joyce has a wonderful slide in one of her presentations of a girl drinking, you know, beer out of a bottle, you know, with the idea that this is not what we want to have come up as the only hit when students are, you know, going to be Googled when they go for that, you know, college interview or for that job. And yet it seems like that seems to come up over and over, that they don't really have much kind of, you know, positive digital footprint to go behind them. And likewise, you know, when I see other new teachers and people part of my PLN and I Google them and I only see, you know, one or two things come up, if anything, you know, what kind of model are we if we're not presenting the best way to be visible to our community and to our practice and to the administration and to our students? How can we, you know, preach creating a positive digital footprint when, you know, the only thing that comes up when we Google our names is maybe rate my teacher. And then we have no control over that, you know. And, yeah, I'm really lucky. I've just been sweating it for years so far and rate my teacher in my school. You know, the fact that I'm even listed as a teacher made me really thrilled because, you know, sometimes people don't think teacher librarians are teachers. So, hello. But I've gotten some good reviews. So I'm going to post right now a link to a presentation I did called Transparency is the New Black. And that is going to give a lot of slides on how that we can boost our transparency in our professional community and with our practice. And I think a lot of these things can be transferable to our students, of which, you know, like I said, we have to, you know, strive to help them craft that presence so that when they leave us, all the cool things that they are, you know, doing can be found. And I'll pass that on to probably Michelle.
Actually, there's an interesting thing that's happening in the chat about public versus private work. And I have to tell you, we have some amazing examples of how making kids work public has really given them authentic experiences that are really going to enhance their digital footprint. And when you know, we harp on the kids all the time. You know, when they come into the high school, the first thing we tell them is get on Facebook, you know, like the library. You can request your school librarians. Your teachers will be there with you. It's time to start thinking about your social media profile in a new way, because the truth is, in 2 or 3 years, you're going to have college admissions counselors starting to review those profiles as part of the admissions process. So you have to kind of start thinking about your public persona and how that's going to come across. I just did an article about this for American Libraries, and actually the feedback on that article was shocking, because really I found that the readership, or at least the readership that posted comments, and obviously it's people who feel strongly one way or another, really didn't feel that there was any purpose to that kind of teaching and learning in K-12 environments. And I think I really strongly disagree with that. And I saw that this came up in the chat again, that, you know, public isn't necessarily good. But if you look at actually Banned Websites Awareness Day, and the logo done for that was actually done by a student in our school, and he was paid by ASL. They bought that logo from him to really make that the logo for the event. The other, I mean, there's another example. Our state library conference, that artwork was also done by our students. We have students who continuously, our music tech teachers, continuously publishing our students' projects and making them accessible to all the teachers and all the students in the school, so that they can draw from that and embed it into their own publications and their own, what it is that they're putting out online. Most of our students do have a YouTube channel they publish for school. They are really putting their work out there on a daily basis, and that is a critical part of making them global learners and making them connected learners. Here we are in Connected Educator Month. That's what inspired this entire week-long festivity, is that we have to teach kids to be responsibly connected, to be able to contribute to, David, you had the term, it's Henry's term, but our universal culture, our Joyce, you know the term. Put it in the chat because I know the term I'm thinking of. But I think that this is really a critical piece: is making students' work public, is not having it all hidden behind some parallel universe to the real world, but really taking as many opportunities as possible to take their work and put it in the real world so that other people can see it and it's really truly evaluated. It definitely steps up the notch for their participation and the level of investment that they put into their work, because it's not just, oh yeah, I'm giving it to my teacher and I'll get a grade on it and maybe my parents will see it, maybe they won't. It really does change the way that they feel about their work. Their reputation is on the line and they feel strongly with it. I'm going to turn it over to somebody else.
In the chat, Michelle, there was a comment from Judith, and I think it's a really valid comment. I think there's a perception that we're talking about the kids in the 98th and 99th percentile. And my experience is that's not true. I think a few of us have done a blog post called "If You Give a Kid a Camera," and we can still in a video camera. And what I'm seeing on the part of my just emerging English speakers in ELL, in ESL, and my special education classes. Is that the types of work we do in libraries with these kids and using technology has allowed them to shine in new ways, and has allowed them to become part of the discussion that formerly was just from what we might have called the intelligentsia in our schools. And they're writing, and people are reading their writings, and their work is being validated. And so, I just want to make sure that we understand that this is not just for the honor students, and it is a way for us to give the kids. And I'll tell you something, it's an interesting, the niche of kids that it seems to be most interested in this, maybe not surprising, it's bringing out the art, the theater, the musician kids, and pulling, and the mathematicians, the design kids, pulling them together and giving them new spotlight in a way that was only there for their national merit finalists and the football players and the stars. People who are like in the background for stage crew are now have the best YouTube videos, for instance, and are celebrated in our channel and have the most hits and are the best bloggers. So it's really giving interesting voice to kids who are not necessarily in the top 10% of the class and who don't care about that stuff.
I just want to jump in and piggyback on that, only because I just had my first meeting. I teach in an alternative ed program, and I'm sort of formulating. I don't start for another 2 weeks on that, and I'm starting to formulate what it is that we're going to do this year based on the kids I just got the roster today, and that really determines how we're going to teach it. But the first thing we're going to start with is actually Google yourself, and let's figure out how to fix this, because I know that that's going to be the first problem we had. I took one of those students to a conference with me, and we had to literally clean up her profile, and I sat there with 3 other students, and it took us a long time to do that. So I think that that's something that we really need to have an experience with our students. So I think it's going to be a very interesting year, and I'll be blogging about it.
Well, I think you're all right, and if any school that is interested in what we call differentiation hires a person like you three, because they know that it's not just the highest level kid that's going to benefit. You're going, through technology and information, you're going to reach a much higher percentage of kids and instill in them the idea that they have something to contribute. And I do think there's 3 levels that are starting to emerge, at least in my mind, of participation in this whole world. The first is the development of my own personal expertise, and that's what I know and am able to do and offer to the world, or offer to an employer, or to my passion. I have to become an expert. The second level, I think, is cooperative kind of work, where I'm working with a team to and I put my piece into that puzzle. For example, if I'm making one of the parts to a car, that has to be done. It's done cooperatively, and my piece has to fit exactly into that puzzle so that the car runs. But the third level, I think, is while it's been around a while, I think is very exciting, and that's the whole collaborative intelligence piece, where groups of kids, adults, and in industry, build together something that no one of them could have done in the past. In other words, that's the real area of creativity and real innovation, where we begin and we may not know exactly where we're going, but as we combine expertise together, new things. And I think young people can experience all three levels all through their school years, whether they're kindergartners or high schoolers. And I think that if we're talking about college and careers, we need to think through that. Any other comments? Welcome.
Well, there was a question in the chat box, and it's funny how I can obviously partition my brain when other people are speaking and both listen and read the chat, but yet when I'm speaking I have a very difficult time. But a question was asked here of how many teacher librarians work with student publication advisors in their school, and I believe that Dr. Rita posted that. And I do, and it's wonderful. Again, in middle school, we have, in my district, we have a daily live TV show. And we find that it is a very wonderful way to involve so many of our students in creation, multimedia, digital development, and iMovie creations, public service announcements. And I really try to, and both the GT teacher and I work together, and we try to make an effort to get as many kids from all the different kinds of pools of kids that we have, because I come from a very wonderfully rich, diverse student body, both ethnically and socioeconomically, and I really want to see, of the 120 kids that we have involved in that every year, that when kids watch our show, that they see themselves in it. And if we work with the ESOL kids, and we work with the regional kids who are seriously emotionally disturbed, and we work with the kids who are at all kinds of levels, and we give special projects, special kinds of opportunities for them to have a foothold in that production. And I'll post the wiki that we have to our TV show. And that's just a wonderful, wonderful way that everyone can feel involved and have a sense of ownership over what we're producing. So that is just one example of that. And if that were taken away from me, and I've had to fight it in the last couple of years with shrinking times, taking away the, the different areas where we used to carve our TV show in the morning. We had, when I opened the school 15 years ago, we created that TV studio from the ground up, ordering that $20,000 beautiful blue curtain and our green screen and our cameras. We had like 10 minutes every morning to do our live show, and the kids would come in on their own. The parents would drop them off, or they would walk or ride their bikes to school. And again, all different learning levels, not just all the GT kids. Nope. Some, of course, a lot, maybe sometimes, but every kind of kid in there coming in early to write the morning script. We have a national news, local news, weather, sports, entertainment, and we do, again, special features, public service announcements, things for the green team, environmental kind of stuff. And it's beautiful, and it's a wonderful opportunity. And like Joyce with curation, I could talk about TV production with my kids and the wonderful ways it affords them to publish things and create things all day. So I'm going to pass on the mic.
Well, I think it's really important for teacher librarians, particularly as they collaborate with classroom teachers to construct together great learning experiences, that they kind of document, the depth of understanding of the topic at hand, whether it's science or social studies, but also the skill level of learning how to learn, which includes the use of the technology and the use of information. And that needs to be communicated constantly to parents, boards, etc., because I do think that two heads are better than one as we push the technology envelope. Well, we just have let's just get to question 3. I wonder if our panelists would respond to question 3. There's just a ton of challenges in opening this world of technology and getting the most out of it. And I wonder how you're dealing with those challenges and what your recommendations are for that.
I guess I'll start, and I have to say, if it weren't for my administration, there's no way I would be on this panel right now. I happen to be in a district with the most visionary, forward-thinking administrators who really do pat us on the back, encourage us to try new things, to experiment, to make mistakes if that's what we have to do, so long as we can fix them and we learn alongside the students with them. I think that there's a comfort zone that we are afforded in this district that is really exemplary, and I wish it was more common than it is. And I think that's the only reason I'm here is because we get to try new stuff and we get to experiment with kids. I mean, I had an instance last year where I wanted to try Scoop It, but it was kids weren't able to set up their accounts. So I called my director of technology at 7 in the morning and said, hey, can you get this unblocked in their email account so that it's actually they're getting their check? So that they can actually just sort of cross-reference and make sure that they confirm their account within Scoop It. And by 7:30, we were able to launch the lesson with Scoop It as opposed to something that we already knew. That's a really atypical experience. Sadly, that is an atypical experience. I wish it were more common. It's really been what makes my job so much fun and transformational, and why our kids are really excited to come in and do work, because they get to try something new. They don't have to do it the same way. They don't have to do things the same way. They can use whatever device it is that they have in their pocket, and they can choose their tools. And I used to call this a free-range media, bring your own device school, but now I'm starting to call it a choose your tools school, because really kids do get to make decisions about what it is that they want to do, how they want to do it, and what they want to do it on. And that's very powerful to engender curiosity among our learners.
I want to grab the mic because I'd like to sort of leave this with Joyce, because she does such a good job at sewing everything together. I agree with everything Michelle said, and I'm always in awe of what she does with her kids, and a little envious at times. But really, and I'm hearing, and I know when I speak, or when we speak, people are like, but how can I do that? Where do you find the time? And yeah, but it's so easy to be discouraged in so many ways with that, like, with whatever obstacles come our way in our districts with our technology. But we really just sort of have to find our ninja-style ways around these obstacles. And sometimes you'll have to apologize later before asking permission. Sometimes you'll have to download things at home and bring them in. Sometimes you'll just have to use paper and pencil. I have several different technology-engaging lessons, but that are pencil and paper. Again, David, yeah, make it work. Here's my Facebook UK wiki page where I sort of bring this out when, for 2 or 3 months of my school year, my kids are, not allowed to be on any of the computers because they're all being used for testing. So this is, where we can sort of have like either fictional characters leaving messages on people's walls using paper, pencil, PowerPoint template. There's an online version. There's all kinds of ways. And then I also at one point came up with an idea of a Twitter-style book review, and I was just brushing it up this morning in between passing out LCD projectors, document cameras, and laminating a gajillion pages for my people because I'm on my 4th day of school. Here's the Twitter-style book review. We're not even using Twitter at all because Twitter's blocked in my district. I get the engagement and the idea of being concise and writing these Twitter-style book reviews and using a character counter that's free, not blocked, where the kids can check it, and then they have to like peer review it. And then I use a Google form where they can submit it to me and to their teacher, and then we can get them as a spreadsheet, of course, in our Google Drive. Look at them. We can post them, by printing them out. We can post them by copying and pasting them into our school Twitter feed, which I can only get to, again, at home. and they can see that. But, you know, we're not letting some of the things stop us from doing exciting opportunities for our kids to connect and to experience technology and to experience their own creativity. Again, finding ways around that. In the next 5 years, I just hopefully will see more and more opening up of those opportunities as we get beyond the banned websites. And I hope Michelle can plug the banned website Awareness Day again. I'm excited and honored to have been asked to speak, and I will be speaking during that week for that. I think this is, again, we're on such an exciting precipice of our profession and our practice that we just need to jump off that ledge. And if we need to start sewing that parachute as we're going down, I'd rather do that than cling to the edge and not jump off. Okay, that was probably a little dramatic, but you know what I'm talking about. I'm passing this over to Joycey.
Okay, and just reading through the chat, I'm seeing that this is not a one-size-fits-all prescription that we're chatting about today. It's going to look different for Judith. It's going to look different for Jane and for me and for everybody else who's in the room. And it's really okay. We're working towards the same goals. We're just doing it differently. I think the important thing this year is to stop doing stupid stuff. I mean, really, to stop doing things that don't matter, to question your practice. It's possible that you're doing things that somebody told you in library school 20 years ago that you're supposed to do that no longer make sense. So, don't bother with inventory. Don't close the library down. Think about, as you list the things that you do in your brain, think about what things you can lose and what things you can try and what things are exciting to you, what's going to get you passionate about teaching in September. And as long as we're plugging things, let me just say that Gwyneth and the team that she's working with right now on the TL Cafe are planning a fabulous list of first Monday activities. This coming Monday, because of Labor Day, is going to be a back-to-school special. We're going to have a Smackdown in December. There's going to be an awful lot of free webinars. We are now going to start, we decided this last night, we're going to start TL Chat Live. And so we're deciding whether it's going to be Monday or Tuesday night where we'll actually have the TL chat hashtag around a particular question, issue, problem, and we'll spend 2 or 3 hours on live chat just talking about that, and that's exciting. I think that for those of you who have questions or just starting out and need mentorship, I know about that. Tamara, yeah, we're trying to figure out what works best. But let's do it together. And we're fortunate to have David's wisdom and a team of professionals who care about each other and who want to mentor each other. So if you're new to this field, join us. Join any one of the many networks. We really are a tribe. I am so excited about this school year. There are so many things I want to try, including flipping, which we didn't have enough time to talk about today. But I think that teachers are overwhelmed. The Common Core is on their brains. Dealing with resources that they've never had to deal with before, user-generated content, how are they going to achieve the goals of research and using evidence and different types of writing. We can lead, and I'm going to put a lot of other stuff aside and lead a few movements that I think are important in my school this year. So, David, how about you? Do you want to close up?
It's been a terrific discussion. I think you're seeing 3 model teacher librarians that we wish could be duplicated all around the country. And I was thinking on the 4th question, as you look at a learning commons as opposed to a traditional library that pretty much collected things and disseminated them, I put a list on what would a principal want to think about as they looked in the learning commons to see what was going on both in physical space, etc. And there's just this whole new world, and I think if all of us as professionals keep the experimentation going. That's the message I get. Is we're willing to take risks. We're willing to, but we're always looking at the bottom line, which is student learning, and it's got to be better. It's always got to push the envelope for the kids as well as the teachers, and then I think we have a recipe for success, not just in librarianship, but in the school culture as well. So, well, I think that kind of wraps it up. Steve, if you're in the room, you can say goodbye. We want to thank all of our panelists and the opportunity we've had, and do keep in touch with all of us. Everybody's in the panel is willing to help and assist in any way we can. So, Steve, back to you.
Thanks to all of you. That was delightful. Don't forget the Learning 2.012 conference, October 2nd and 3rd at learning20.com, where we talk about all of this for 2 days straight. Anyway, thanks so much for being here today. Panelists, thanks for those of you who've attended and participated. We have an hour break now in our schedule, and then we have a special session with Julie, Lindsay, and Vicki Davis on the Flat Classroom Project. And then after that, I'm interviewing Gordon Dryden, the New Zealand educator whose book, Unlimited, The New Learning Revolution, is an amazing piece of work. So stay tuned. Lots more to come and one more day to go. Take care, everybody. Bye. Bye.